All right, today's topic is it possible to boost the immune system? And I think this is a very relevant topic to cover because it's a question that is not uncommon. And if you pay attention to the news or health blogs, oftentimes, in the fall, you'll get barraged with emails to buy immune boosting, quote unquote, supplements and, do these immune boosting activities. But is it actually possible to boost the immune system? I would argue that it's not because the immune system is very large and diverse. And there's actual mechanisms built into the immune system where if you raise one, say, function of it, you are reciprocally inhibiting or blocking another function. So to say that you can boost the immune system isn't accurate. You can raise or boost a specific part of the immune system, but you have to know what part you're trying to raise or boost and know how to do that. So the answer to the general question is no. The answer to can we raise or boost a specific part of the immune system? The answer is yes. This picture is one of white blood cells that are fighting a cancer cell. So, in the context of cancer, we want to quote unquote boost the immune system to defend against the cancer and kill it. But we want to boost a specific part of the immune system. If we boost the wrong part, then we might actually hurt our anti-cancer defenses and hurt our goal of clearing the cancer. So it's important to be specific and individualized and specific on a patient level, but also on a cellular level or immune system level. So let's dive in to some immune system biology so we can understand this better. Now, as we've talked about many times, there's two sides to the immune system. The first side, or the, say, base level, is called the innate immune system. And the innate immune system is made of cells that come from our bone marrow, and there's a whole list of them. There are neutrophils, there are macrophages, there are, well, the monocytes, which become macrophages, excuse me. There's eosinophils, there's basophils, and there's other cells as well. But these are the main cells that we talk about when we're talking about the innate immune system. We've got the neutrophils, the monocytes, which become macs or macrophages. And again, sorry, I don't have my pen, so I'm trying to write with a mouse. Macrophages, and then eosinophils and basophils. So the main focus on this slide are the macrophages, because as you can see here, we have lots of different types of macrophages. Now, macrophage is Latin for large eater. So basically, a macrophage is a cell that will come and eat foreign things, whether that's a damaged tissue from an injury, or that is some sort of microbe like a virus or a bacterial infection or parasite or whatever we're trying to kill. Macrophages come and they engulf bad damaged tissue or foreign things, and they take them and they can present them to the part of the immune system that is the second level, called the adaptive immune system. And the adaptive immune system ends up being highly specific and highly trained. So you could think of the innate immune system. I teach patients, think of the innate immune system as first responders. These are local police, fire department, that sort of thing. The adaptive immune system would be more highly trained. The adaptive immune system is the SWAT team. And so from an innate immune system standpoint, one other cell I didn't mention yet is called a dendritic cell. And dendritic cells are what are called professional antigen presenting cells. And antigen presenting cells are cells that present antigen or present foreign material to a naive T cell in the adaptive immune system so that the adaptive immune system can expand and go attack and kill. So the dendritic cell is the member of the innate immune system that is the professional presenter, professional antigen presenting cell. Macrophages are also antigen presenting cells, but they are not professionals. So they might make more mistakes than the dendritic cells. So ideally, we would like the dendritic cells to present, but if we get chronically inflamed, macrophages might have to do the presenting and they might not do it as efficiently. And so now they might present something that is self. And if you present self to the adaptive immune system and you make antibodies to it and T cells are mobilized against it, that could be autoimmune disease. So we want efficient immune response. Now back to the macrophages. The macrophage is the general name, but depending on the tissue we're looking at, they have a tissue specific name. So macrophages in bone are called osteoclasts. And we've talked about this in the osteoporosis, osteopenia video in the past, and how it's really an inflammatory imbalance after menopause, not so much a calcium deficiency. And osteoclasts are the macrophages that eat bone. So they actually break down bone. So if you get more inflamed and you have more osteoclasts, you're going to break down your bone faster. And that's disadvantageous because already by the fact that you're aging, you're producing fewer osteoblasts, B, which build bone. So we don't want to be inflamed, period. But if you're having bone loss issues, you definitely don't want to have too many osteoclasts. In the nervous system, macrophages are called microglial cells. In the lung, they're called alveolar cells. In the liver, they're called Kupffer cells. In connective tissue, they're histiocytes. So each tissue has its own type of macrophage, but in general, they all are big eaters. They're all responsible for killing or clearing antigens in that given tissue and or presenting them if there aren't enough dendritic cells around. Now, if the innate immune system can take care of it, that would be ideal, with it being whatever the foreign thing is. If we only need to recruit the innate immune system to clear it, that's great, because that means we didn't have to call in the SWAT team. So it would be very efficient if your neutrophils and macrophages could take care of whatever it is that's bothering you. If the innate immune cells can't, then we have antigen presentation to the adaptive immune system, and we have to recruit T cells and B cells to help us fight. So let's look at what that looks like. And so this part of the conversation, the B cells, the T cells, the adaptive immune system, I go in depth in my book on this, beginning with the introduction of the book. So this graphic is from my book, and that can be found on Amazon, paperback, hardcover, ebook, Audible. There's any way you want to consume it, it's there. So this is the image. This is where all the magic's happening in the immune system here. Well, it's all magic, but this is a magical moment, we'll say. So remember, the dendritic cell is the innate immune cell. And remember, the dendritic cell is the professional antigen presenting cell, APC. So the dendritic cell, with its little arm here, grabbed some foreign thing, all right, some antigen. And the antigen is anything foreign. That could be a microbe, that could be a food, that could be a piece of pollen or some other allergen, that could be a toxin of some sort. It's something foreign that the dendritic cell recognizes, this is not me, this should not be here. And so if the innate immune system couldn't clear it and take care of it by itself for you, and or if it's working to clear it but needs reinforcements, the dendritic cell will bring that antigen and come present it to the naive T cell, which is this guy. So you see the TH0. The T is a T cell, H stands for helper, and 0 lets us know that this is a naive T cell, or this is immature, or a little baby. Okay, it's cute, it's chubby, it's got wrist lines and ankle lines, but it's useless. Okay, so for this naive T cell to actually help the dendritic cell and help the innate immune system against whatever the foreign thing is, we need this T cell to mature into an adult with a specific interest and a specific job. Okay, so the way that it does that is when the dendritic cell is performing this handoff to the T cell and showing it the antigen, the dendritic cells also going to release what are called cytokines or chemical messengers to tell this naive T cell, hey, you need to turn into a specific job or mature into a specific job. And then it's really nerdy and you guys don't care, but just for completeness, there's also what's called co-stimulation that happens over here from the dendritic cell to the naive T cell. So when you've got antigen, you've got co-stimulation, you've got cytokines, this baby can mature into something specific. Now, depending on what these cytokines are that are released from the dendritic cell, this baby will mature down one of these various arrows. Okay, and as you can see, each arrow has a different chemical messenger on it. And those chemical messengers are what these cytokines are that the dendritic cell releases. So say the dendritic cell presents antigen, and the antigen it has is virus. Well, the Th1 response is the main antiviral, anti-cancer surveillance of the adaptive immune system. Okay, so if we're fighting viruses or we're trying to fight cancer, we want a robust Th1 response. And so those blue dots are the cytokines that the dendritic cell would release would be interleukin 12. And when you combine the cytokines, the co-stimulation, and viral antigen with a naive T cell, you're telling it, hey, mature into a Th1 cell and go kick virus and cancer butt. If instead that dendritic cell is presenting a parasite, say, parasite, then it's going to release, instead of IL-12, it's going to release IL-4. And so IL-4 will mature this baby into a Th2 cell, and the Th2 response is the hollow space mucosal defender. So anywhere you have a hollow space, gut, lung, sinus, bladder, gums, a Th2 response is going to be there to help fight bacteria, virus, or worms, yeast, parasites, big hollow space infections. So Th2 would be appropriate in those hollow spaces. If dendritic cell releases IL-4 and TGF-beta, you get Th9. So we just saw IL-4 up here with Th2 as well. Well, combining that with TGF-beta pushes it not from to Th2, but to Th9. And Th9 is basically Th2, but more intense. So Th2 and Th9 are kind of your allergy type of inflammation. So again, gut, lung, sinus, bladder, skin, gums. So that could be symptoms such as gut infection, asthma, chronic sinusitis, chronic periodontitis, bladder infections, skin issues, etc., eczema. So these are what go awry in those issues. Th17 also fits in that group, except Th17, when it goes bad, goes real bad, and Th17 is what drives the tissue damage in autoimmune disease. So we don't want to have too inappropriately high Th17 because, again, now we're driving autoimmune risk. Th22 protects mucosal barriers and creates inflammation at those levels to help keep them clear, but inappropriately high would damage the barrier. P follicular helper cells help drive antibody production. So far we've talked about T cells from an adaptive immune standpoint. The other side of the adaptive immune system, are B cells, which end up making antibodies for us. And antibodies are the memory of the immune system. So, the example I like to give is the first time you have chicken pox, you scratch, you break out, you itch. You might miss school for a couple days, then you beat it and you're all good. Well, the reason you break out, scab, and itch is because it's novel. Your immune system's never seen it before, so the virus gets, a greater hold on you before you can respond. However, after that first infection, you now have B cells, you now have antibodies to it forever floating in your bloodstream, performing surveillance, so that the next time you get chicken pox, you never break out, scab, or itch because you knocked it out before it could get hold of you. Another example would be COVID. The first COVID infection, if it's going to be severe, the first is the most severe typically. And why? Well, because you've never seen it before, you didn't have antibodies. Once you recover from it, you have antibodies. So the second and third infections are more mild, again, because you've got surveillance and you can respond faster. So T follicular helper cells help us make B cells, which make our antibodies in our memory. And then lastly, Treg cells are the anti-inflammatory cells of the adaptive immune system. They're promoting tolerance. They're telling you to tolerate yourself. So if you lose tolerance to yourself, that could be autoimmune disease. They're telling you to tolerate foods. Hey, don't react to that strawberry. You've seen it before. It's not enemy. They're telling you to tolerate things that you shouldn't overreact to. So these are the 7 different T cell subsets that we know about scientifically right now. It's kind of the 7 futures that this baby could grow up into and become. But generally it has to pick one. There is some plasticity between these, but once it picks one, in general, it's going to stay that way if we just make it simple. That's not true, but just for today's communication, we'll say that. So you have to pick. So back to our question, can we boost the immune system? Well, no, overall we can't, because if you could boost the whole immune system, then that would mean you could turn this immature baby into all 7 of these at once and raise the levels of all of them at once, which would boost the immune system because it'd raise the levels of all things. And we can't do that. So if we want to boost the immune system, we have to do it with context and say, okay, if what this dendritic cell is presenting is a virus, then we want to boost the Th1 response. And so we would want to take action to promote interleukin 12 and promote this guy growing into Th1. And there's various things we can do to do that. However, if you had, say, a persistent gut infection and you weren't getting over it, then now we want to consider this area of cells and promote, in this order, Th2, 9, 17. If we can do it with the least aggression possible, the better. But either way, we want to promote, one of these specifically in order to achieve our specific goal. Now, if you promote one, so say we've got a virus, all right, and I've drawn this for many of you, but say we have a seesaw here, a teeter-totter, depending on where you grew up and what your playgrounds had. If we have a T helper type 1 on one end of the seesaw and T helper type 2 on the other, ideal is balance. Health is balance. So the immune system would be balanced between these two so it could adapt to whatever it faces. But say you have a chronic GI issue that doesn't get resolved and you're chronically high in Th2. Well, if you go up on the seesaw or the teeter-totter, where did your friend go that you're on it with? They went down, right? They weigh more than you, so they go down, you go up. Well, if you go up in the air, they can't go up in the air, right? And vice versa. If they go down, you can't go down. So we have what's called reciprocal inhibition. If we have a high Th2 response, well, then we're suppressing the Th1 response. So if this goes back to, can we boost the immune system globally? No. If you're raising Th2 or you're stuck here, then you're not going to be able to raise Th1. You're blocking that on purpose. And that's okay if it's an appropriate immune response. Say you have a gut infection, an acute one, you raise Th2 on purpose to clear that gut infection. Therefore, you are purposely suppressing Th1 for a couple of days while you get ahead of that infection. 3 to 5 days, you clear that infection. Seesaw goes back to balance. No big deal. But if you're stuck in Th2 because you're not clearing that gut infection, you're staying high, and now you have long-term Th1 suppression, well, that could be a problem. That could lead to, reactivation of common herpes family viruses like HSV1. I get stressed out and have cold sores. Or Epstein-Barr virus reactivates, and now you have mono or long COVID or, MS or any number of other shingles outbreak or any number of other herpes family viruses, or maybe a cancer tumor cell sneaks by because Th1 is cancer surveillance as well. So we don't want long-term imbalance because there is a role for the Th1 side. And very often I'll hear from the patients who are allergy, eczema, asthma, sinuses, this kind of imbalance, they also say, well, I also get sick all the time. Okay, well, why? Well, because you're chronically stuck over here and chronically suppressing your antiviral defenses. So you get sick more often than your spouse or your family members who are in the same room, touching the same doorknobs, shaking the same hands. Immune imbalance for you. Okay, so in that case, we would want to boost Th1, so to speak, to help you not get sick. But if you boost Th1 and it inhibits the Th2 response that isn't getting over the persistent sinus or gut infection, then now you're stuck still with a problem there. So this is why you need a functional medicine doctor that understands these things and can do the detective work to understand, well, what is the priority right now with the immune system? And where do we go once we achieve priority one? Next would be priority two, et cetera. One other thing to know that's very important because many people use albuterol inhalers or are on long steroid tapers and things like that. Research has shown that steroids hardwire a Th2 immune response. So chronic steroid use creates the seesaw imbalance, so creates a Th2 dominance. Not good, right? Because now we're creating persistent reciprocal inhibition here and not good viral surveillance or cancer surveillance. Well, my doctor gave me an albuterol inhaler because I have asthma. Okay, well, the goal would be to use that as a life-saving strategy, not as a daily routine. Why? Well, because as a daily routine, again, it's hardwiring the immune imbalance that drives the asthma. So the treatment actually makes it worse if you're doing it every single day. And I've made videos on that in the past that cites that research, so you can look that up on the channel. But again, we need to understand the immune impact of these strategies we're implementing because they can work for us or against us. So there's a lot here, but that hopefully gives you an idea of why we can't boost everything all at once. We can only boost certain things. So we have to have an idea of what are we trying to accomplish and what does it take to do that. So here's a picture of more in depth of how the immune system works. So B cells. So remember, B cells are antibodies. Okay, so when a T cell, again, the T cell receives from the dendritic cell. Over here, the dendritic cell presents antigen to the T cell. Hey, here's this foreign thing I found. T cell picks it up from them, now has it, and the T cell is going to present it to the B cell and say, hey, let's stimulate you with cytokines. Look at this foreign thing, make antibodies to it. So the B cell sees it and says, okay, I've got memory to that chickenpox. So if we ever see it again, we'll be ready to go. And then it also presents the plasma cell, which is the cell that pumps out the antibodies long term to go bind it and kill it if it sees it. T cells, similar. So we have virus, an innate immune cell, dendritic cell or macrophage grabs the virus, presents pieces of it to the T cell and says, hey, look at this. The T cell now has it and walks up to the infected cell and says, hey, do you match what I'm looking for? When it does, it releases the kill cytokines to then kill that infected cell and wipe it out. So it's really a cool mechanism that's very efficient for us typically. We just have to live in a way that doesn't suppress it and throw it off balance. And so lastly, I made a video covering this information last year, but I wanted to bring it back up because this was very interesting in showing that a couple things. A, mental health issues can be due to immune issues. And I've made many videos in the past showing that if you're inflamed, that can raise your anxiety and depression. And so we need to quench sources of inflammation, such as gut infections, food reactions, mold exposure, sleep deprivation, all kinds of things. But this video, or excuse me, this paper was showing that a lack of the T regulatory cells, so that was these guys right here, remember the ones that promote tolerance, a lack of the T regulatory cells drives inflammation in the brain and drives anxiety and depression behavior. So you might have anxiety and depression because of too much inflammation from something foreign, or you might have anxiety and depression because of too much inflammation because you're lacking something you need. You're lacking the anti-inflammatory side of it. Again, that's this part of that whole picture. If we don't have enough tolerance and enough and enough anti-inflammatory, calm down, don't shoot at that, then we can get too inflamed and develop mental health issues. And so the paper says this study suggests a causative role of T regulatory cell depletion in the proliferation of peripheral immune cells into the brain that then cause anxiety, depression, or impaired cognitive function. So maybe brain fog, memory loss, things like that. We hypothesize that chronic inflammation mediated by depletion of T-regs eventually causes irreversible neurological damages, including blood-brain barrier disruption and a permissive pro-inflammatory state leading to chronic inflammation in the brain, explaining untreatable anxiety and depression. So we want to have balanced immunity. We don't want to have deficient immunity, and we don't want to boost the wrong side. We want to be specific and know what is it that we're trying to accomplish. So let's open this up for questions.
Is it okay then if you're like on an immunosuppressant, if you want to take like probiotics to help your gut, it's not automatically going to create a flare with autoimmunity, correct?
That's more of a patient-specific answer, really.
Oh,
Because again, it's well, can I answer specific to you? Is that okay?
yes, you can.
Okay, so if someone's got GI autoimmunity, then oftentimes we've got imbalance in the Th2 917 kind of axis. And so, if someone's taking steroids, remember steroids can perpetuate that, this pathway here. And so if this pathway is already, if you're already imbalanced this way behind that autoimmunity, then, the chronic steroid use may not be the long-term answer, might hurt us long-term. I mean, there's a time and place. So, if someone's acute and someone's in an acute asthma attack, obviously rather than die, we want to use that albuterol inhaler. But then once their life is saved, we don't necessarily want to hit that inhaler every single day as a preventative, right? We want to do things, dive in, figure out their labs and figure out, okay, what can we do to drive immune balance so that they're not relying on an inhaler every day. So when they give steroids are really, again, promoting hardwiring of that Th2 immune imbalance. So maybe we use them to buy us time and work on symptoms or whatever in the short term, but hopefully so that we don't have to bring them back on board and we can address whatever's the underlying issue is.
Okay, but are probiotics considered steroidal then?
No, sorry,
Okay.
that's the other part of your question. So then
Okay.
can probiotics flare us? Unfortunately, that's nuanced too, or fortunately. Some probiotic strains drive a Th1 type of response. Some drive a Th2. I had a call with the young guy today who's in high school, and he has history of psoriasis and skin issues and histamine type stuff. And so he's gut testing showed that his probiotics were deficient. Multiple strains were deficient. And his mom was saying that she didn't want to give him probiotics because some probiotics drive histamine. And it's like, well, yeah, some do, but some are antihistamine. So we'd have to get nuanced and say, let's use something like Lactobacillus rhamnosus, which is antihistamine in him. And does that help? Yes. Okay. So figuring out if we know the person's underlying biology, we can say, okay, these probiotics will benefit you. We probably want to stay away from these initially until we can get improved gut barrier function.
Thank you. Thank you for
You're,
doing this topic.
you're welcome. Thanks for bringing it up. What other questions and comments? I think was there one in the chat here? Let's see. If you're on an immune suppressive drug and rarely, if ever, get sick, does that indicate your immune system T cell thingies are off? Good. I like it. Um, that's more of a in-depth question. I can't say yes or no to that. Um, again, the immune suppressing drug you're on, we'd want to know about that too. So if we're talking about a biologic like Humira, say, the biologic medications are going to target a specific cytokine. They're monoclonal antibodies to a specific cytokine. So they're going after, say, IL-6 or TNF alpha. So they're actually not suppressing your whole immune system. They're suppressing that cytokine. And by doing that, they're suppressing the branch that requires that cytokine to go that way. So, for example, if you were on a TNF alpha inhibitor, that would be blocking this pathway, but you would still be able to be antiviral. So you still might not get sick, even though you're on a quote unquote immune suppressant.
Going off that question, if you get sick all the time because is it because you're on immunosuppressant, or is it just because you might be more prone to get sick all the time?
It's possible that it's the immune suppressant or, the immune suppressant on top of your underlying immune dysfunction makes it, you know, double whammy.
Okay, thanks.
hmm Uh, Here's another one through the chat. What are the most essential vitamins, minerals, lifestyle choices? Um, okay, sorry, this question, we're not on that question yet. Hold on, we'll stick to this topic here. But that triggers a question that someone probably has anyway. What are the best natural things to do to promote certain directions here, right? So let's go here. If we want to promote TH1, you want to use things like, and again, this is not a recommendation for any specific person, but in general, the research says we can promote TH1 with things like astragalus and andrographis and berberine, things like that. If we want to promote TH2, that is things like green tea extracts like EGCG, berry-based polyphenols and antioxidants, your dark colored fruits. If you want to, um, if you want to block things, if you want to block these guys, right? One thing you could do is promote these guys. So if we go back to that seesaw, right, and we have TH2 on this end, just as an example, and TH1 on this end, if TH2 is high and TH1 is low, and we want to lower TH2, right? Well, one thing you could do to lower TH2 would be to push down on it. Or you could lower TH2 without pushing down on it and instead pushing up on TH1, right? Or you could do both at the same time. So again, there's various strategies we can take to promote a balanced immune system. So if you had high TH1 and low TH2, and you want to lower your TH1, you could work to promote TH2, which would reciprocally inhibit TH1, which is the opposite of what I drew here, right? Or vice versa. High TH2, low TH1, same, promote TH1, suppress TH2 if you can. So again, supporting TH1 will lower TH2, will work to lower TH2 for you. So you could support TH1 and lower TH2. Some of them, like TH22, if you're high here, if we want to just knock that down, we could use things like turmeric or resveratrol, which are also can be useful for TH17. If we want to promote T regulatory cells, which are the, hey, tolerate yourself, don't shoot at that kind of thing. Those are things like vitamin A, vitamin D, glutathione, fish oil. Okay, so there's lots of natural strategies. Those are supplemental things and dietary things. Um, but you can use things like sleep. Sleep is required for healthy TH1 response. If you have sleep deprivation, that's going to push you more towards a TH2 imbalance. It's going to suppress your antiviral defenses. It's going to make you worse at insulin sensitivity. So sleep is key. Fasting is key. If you have a TH2 imbalance or you want to raise TH1, then autophagy is clutch. Autophagy is the cellular house cleaning mechanism that the body uses. And the best way for us to stimulate that is going to be some form of fasting. So, not just the nutrients you eat and consume, but also the way you time your nutrient intake matters. Exercise can stimulate TH1 at the right amounts and the right intensity. If we overdo exercise, that's a stressor that promotes cortisol. Cortisol promotes TH2. So the more stressed you are, the more TH2 promotion that is going on. And again, that would fit, that's internal steroids you're taking at that point. Too much cortisol, right? It's just like hitting the albuterol inhaler, except the albuterol was given to you from outside. High stress is giving you the albuterol from the inside, say. So either way, cortisol or corticosteroids promote TH2. So that's why we really want to take care of stress, whether that's, a gluten bomb, financial stress, relationship stress, sleep deprivation, overtraining with exercise, etc.
I
Other
have a,
questions?
oh, I have a question about the probiotics. So if somebody is on an antibiotic, I always
Mhm.
thought that you should put them on a probiotic while they were on that. Is that accurate or no?
Yeah, so antibiotics are going to kill your microbiota depending on where you're applying them. If it's oral going down the gut, or if you're doing an intranasal for the sinuses, the systemic antibiotics are going to mess up your microbiota, whether that, systemically. So the gut microbiome and the skin microbiome, the sinus microbiome, the oral microbiome, all of them are the allied forces to our immune system. And so we need them there and they need to be healthy and in balance. If we take antibiotics, that drives imbalance by killing good bugs. Antibiotics are not heat-seeking missiles for bad bugs. They're they're just like napalm. You're just dropping it in there and scorch earth everything, right? So there is collateral damage with antibiotics, and so it makes sense to replace your probiotics when you're taking antibiotics. However, there's timing to it. If you take the probiotic at the same time as the antibiotic, you know, you're just killing your probiotic. So what you want to do is take the probiotic about 2 hours after or away from your antibiotic dose. So that way you drop the antibiotic in, hopefully get the killing you want of the bad guys and whatever collateral damage to the good guys. And then when that's out of your system or being metabolized significantly after about 2 hours or so, adding the probiotics, helps you put good things back without wiping them out when they get down there.
Dr. B, this is such a cool graph because it reminds me of the whole chart for, supplementing yourself through COVID, if you have
Mhm.
COVID, and that whole shore up your immune system, and then if you're in acute illness, and then as you're in recovery, how the timing, whenever you talk about timing, that's always so interesting about the timing of when we take things, so that it affects us the best at the time we're dealing with it.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's all this stuff is in flux, right? So, and thanks for bringing that up. Another thing to know is that you could be in different. So the nerd term is phenotype, which is basically what's your presentation right now. So are you a Th2 phenotype right now? And then maybe, next week you'd be a t-reg phenotype because you'd finished clearing that sinus and ear infection. So now your body's saying, calm, your immune system saying, let's calm back down, right? But you're going through different things. A healthy immune system is shifting its phenotype depending on what's going on in real time right now, right? And then in different parts of your body, you could have a different phenotype. So it gets nuanced, which is really cool. But I say all this to say, just like, today someone said, well, my vitamin D is lower. Why is it lower? I've been taking it. Well, again, it's supply and demand, and your physiology is dynamic. Just because you get your vitamin D to your goal dose doesn't mean you're good there forever, right? You're good there until you need to use it for something, whether that's a viral infection or whether you're upregulating or downregulating one or more of the 2,500 genes vitamin D controls. So there's always need for it, and therefore we always need to be providing it on some level. So as we pick up a subclinical virus at some, get together we go to this week, a healthy immune system should shift this way. And then once it clears that, it goes back to balance and we start from home. And now, if I eat some food that, carried in some salmonella on it, well, then I'll shift to a Th2 and hopefully the immune system knocks that out and I don't notice. And then we come back to balance. And now, because the salmonella created some damage, we'll shift this way and make it anti-inflammatory and patch up that damage. And then we're back here and ready to adjust again.